Hey, welcome to the 2021 Mindset Mastery for Business Leaders Summit, hosted by my friend Nicole Holland. I'm Jordan Harbinger, and I'm going to share with you how you can increase your net worth by improving your network, so stick around.
Jordan, thank you so much for being here. It's always such a pleasure to hang out with you. And also, I'm so inspired by you. You know this personally. A lot of my followers know that you're like my favorite podcaster. So
Thank
it's
you.
always an honor. Absolutely. And as I've watched you over the years from where I first came across you to where you are now, I've seen a lot of your own evolution. You were already a leader and a master by the time I came across you. You've been doing podcasting for a very long time, but over the past few years, the trajectory since you've started the Jordan Harbinger Show, it's like you're just soaring. And so I want to start by asking you to go back in time and let's talk about before folks like Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, Leah Remini were happy to sit down with you and share their stories. What did you previously believe about yourself that limited your network and success level that you've since overcome? And what mindset shift did you make that propelled you forward into the Jordan Harbinger we know and love today?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. So one of the things that I think is different is, of course, the podcast landscape. You know, when I first started, the majority of people I wanted to get on my podcast were like, what's a podcast? Or I think I've heard of that. How do I do it? And I had to show them how to install Skype. I mean, it was, some basic ass stuff that people couldn't do. And I remember people being like, lose my number, and literally telling me like, don't ask me this stuff. Like, this is stupid. I don't want to waste my time. I got some kind of unnecessarily painful rejections, but also I was in this industry where I started networking early on with like internet marketers, and I didn't realize that a lot of those people are just like damaged and terrible, like in any industry. I just had like a negative segment and I really let them get to me. But as I started to interact with higher quality people that were real creators, not that internet marketers can't be real creators, but the majority of these sort of arbitrage scammy guys are not doing anything of note. I started networking with authors and people that were really good. And I would shoot for the moon. I would get like Robert Greene, who's a mentor to Ryan Holiday. And then Ryan Holiday would come on. And I would get these really good, accomplished people. And over time, I remember Ryan Holiday, now we're good friends, but early on in the game, I had him on and he went, oh, that was like a real interview, Jordan. And I was like, yeah, that's the idea. And he said, yeah, I guess I'm just not used to that. A lot of people, they just kind of ask, the same set of questions. And I was like, well, yeah, I read the book, and he goes, yeah, I don't think most people do that, which I realize now, knowing a bunch of journalists, that most people don't even read the book. Like even journalists, they're like, I don't have time to read the book for the person I'm interviewing. And I thought like crazy. So after a while, I started to get a lot of positive feedback from people that I really looked up to. And that took me from, well, I'm kind of like a fake, wannabe journalist in my friend's basement doing a podcast and nobody cares about podcasts and certainly nobody cares about my podcast, to, hey, I interviewed a best-selling author and they said it was the best interview that they've ever done about this book, and the book has been out for 5 years. So maybe I am actually good at this. And that's probably about 7 years ago now that started to go on. But bear in mind, I've been doing my podcast for 14 years. So like, the first 7 years, I just was interviewing people that I thought I could get and doing an okay job. And then as I started to get better at it, I started to want to get better at it as well, if that makes sense, right? Like, as soon as you start getting props for preparing, you're like, well, I need to prepare this way for everyone. I need to do 12 hours of prep for every guest, not just the ones that are famous. And so then you start to do that, and then you get a reputation of being the guy who's more prepared and doing a really good show. And like, your audience feedback helps change your mindset. So it's not some light bulb on type of thing where you're like, ding, I'm amazing. It's like over a period of years, you build confidence in yourself. Probably like if you're a black belt in martial arts, like you don't break a board and go like, oh, I'm awesome now. You work your way up to black belt from white belt, and then suddenly you're like, okay, or not so suddenly, you're like, I really do think I can do these things. I do understand that I can do this, and you get tested along the way. So I don't want people to think like you're going to have an epiphany that gives you some amazing mindset shift. That's sort of like a fairy tale. You hear about it in books that are probably apocryphal, like sudden enlightenment from some Buddhist monk while they were walking the mountains. Like, that's unlikely. And let's say that that does happen to some people. Let's assume you are not that person, right? You're not that person. You're going to build it brick by brick over time, and that's how you're going to achieve what you're going to achieve. And so I want to give people to give themselves a break, because I think a lot of people are like, I've been doing this for 3 years and I still feel, weaknesses in these areas. You have another, in my experience, you have at least another 10 years of that. And then you're going to find other areas where you think you could probably improve. So stop looking for like sudden enlightenment and confidence.
I love that. And it really is that confidence that grows through you believing in yourself, I think, or you like
over time
time, because you're acting. I know for myself, like some of the things you're talking about, I totally identify with, like from starting. I mean, my podcast has been out of production for a year now, and I keep thinking about getting back to it. And I want to, because I want to share things, but it's not a priority to me, I guess. I much prefer doing something like this, where we have a tangible outcome for the audience that actively engages and takes a responsibility to say, hey, I want to modify my mindset. I want to grow. I want to learn from some of the best people in the industry. And so come here at this time. Whereas the podcast, it got started because I was kind of told I should.
Yeah, can I jump in on that, actually?
Yes, please do.
So remember when website, like you and I are old enough to remember when you had like websites were around and they're like, your business needs a website. And everyone was like, oh, do I have to do this? I don't understand this. And like every dry cleaner needed a website suddenly. And so if you knew how to make websites and you were like 15 or 16 years old, you were freaking loaded, right? Because like everyone's dad is like, hey, I heard I need a website. And you're like making a website for your friend's dad who owns a Chinese restaurant, like for no reason. This is even now people are doing that with podcasting, except a podcast is even less universally required than a website. Okay. Now your restaurant probably doesn't need a website. You can go on Yelp and you can upload your menu and you can put it in DoorDash and you're good. You don't need your own website. I haven't gone to a restaurant's website in a decade. Okay. So with podcasting, people who make money selling courses on podcasting, and I don't want to say any names because look, there's some value in everything, or I shouldn't say that. There's some value in a lot of those, but not all of them. They make their money telling you need those things. And maybe you do if you really want to do a podcast, but you probably don't really need to do a podcast. And whenever I get invited to talk about podcasting at like entrepreneur events, they're always like, talk about podcasting and building a podcast. And I'm like, would you mind if I talked about why most people in the room don't need a podcast? And they're like, yeah, sure. And that talk has been so popular because people will line up after and go, okay, I think you just saved me like 200 hours of time. And I bill $2,000 an hour as a partner at a major law firm. And I thought I needed a podcast that I was on. So I owe you like a boat, like I'm like, I'll take it. But there's really a lot of people that will say, no, I'm so glad. I feel like you've let me off the hook. And I've let myself off the hook on a lot of things recently too. I'm not on TikTok. I post twice a year on Instagram, other than my stories, which are just funny things that I see going around in life. I don't build channels that I don't want to feed. I don't make excerpts for my show on TikTok because they don't convert and nobody can show me the data that they do. And it's great to be let off the hook. So if you're thinking, oh, I feel like I should do a podcast because I'm a coach or a chiropractor or a lawyer, you need to really decide if you need a podcast. And the way you do that is, would you do it for free if there was no ROI for you? If the answer is no, you probably should not do a podcast because it's a ton of work. And it's not the kind of thing like a YouTube series where you do 10 YouTube videos with certain stretches and then you're doing lead gen for your chiropractic firm. This is something you have to feed. You've got to do a show every other week at the very least. And, you can't fake your way through it. And bad ones are really easy to create and really good ones are very hard to create. So don't do it if it's not something that you really enjoy. If you think podcasting sounds like a hell of a lot of fun, you always wanted to have a talk show as a kid, and this is like your fun time drinking with your friends talking about Boston sports in the garage, go ahead, do a podcast about that. Don't expect to ever make any money doing it, though. And if your idea is to get rich podcasting, do literally anything else. Smuggle gold from Argentina in your pants or something. Like, you will make more money and have a higher chance of success smuggling wildlife across international borders or something. Like, do literally anything else other than podcasting to try and make an easy buck, because it's one of the hardest ways that I've found to actually make money online, especially.
I will say, just because one of the things I do for a living is produce podcasts.
Yeah.
That for me, like I leverage for clients, I leverage podcasts. We build it for them with a very particular outcome.
Sure.
So it's not this like ongoing forever and ever show like yours or like
Right.
the one I started was, because I didn't understand that back then. So I was also interviewing kind of the people you were talking about before. Like I felt, wow, okay, these people want to be on my show. Wow, these people, you know, are best-selling authors and all. But I didn't understand the smoke and mirrors until
Sure.
time went on. And so now I really do look at things more like you're saying, like in alignment, I guess. I want to enjoy and feel great and excited about what I'm doing. And thus, you know, Summit is way more exciting to me because I get to connect deeply. I get to continue building those relationships, and I get to do it as I'm a weirdo introvert who travels in a van with cats. Like I am not looking to be on stage all the time. So now you, as your confidence built, as you were building your confidence and you were getting higher level and higher level people, you were recognizing, okay, who you don't want to interview, who you do want to interview, and you had been getting the no's. Well, when you started getting the yeses, can you talk a little bit about that in a way that kind of takes us through, if you can think back of like kind of a step-by-step, like as you progress, what are some of those mindset hacks? And you share this in your networking course too, which everybody has access to through the link. But like, what are some of the mindset hacks or activities to do to increase your confidence and increase your resiliency to the negatives? And instead of, I'm speaking from my experience here. So instead of feeling like, oh, another no, or, oh, I'm not ready, maybe I've just got to keep building a relationship with them. I had this like huge epiphany literally this morning. And I was like, why the fuck am I going to keep trying to get somebody to interview with me who clearly
doesn't want to do it? Yeah.
Doesn't want it, have to prove myself or have to, like, I'm thinking about people who I've been building a relationship with for the past 3 years. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I'm going to let them know. No, that's okay. We don't need to do anything.
Yeah. There's, you know, what's funny about those people? They're never, all right, so I'm going to try and be diplomatic-ish about this, but like, all right, the easiest people for me to reach that I've booked at a certain level. Look, some people you can tweet at and they're like, yes, when? But it was really easy for me to book Mark Cuban. It was really easy for me to book Kobe Bryant. It was really easy for me to book Ray Dalio. It was really easy for me to book T.I. Harris. And it was really easy for me to book Matthew McConaughey. Why is it so hard for me to book a guy who self-published a memoir about something and is now like an internet guru, whatever? I'm chasing that guy for like 3 months. I don't do that anymore, obviously. But years ago, I chased that guy for like 2-3 months. And I'm like, wait a minute, what is going on here? And you realize that a lot of times people are hard to book because they enjoy the feeling of being important in someone else's head. And it's because they're nobody and they're super insecure about it. Whereas like all these super awesome, high performance, billionaire, amazing people or like pro athletes, their publicist is like, oh yeah, let's do it. What works for you? He's off all of August. You want to do it in person? Great. Why don't you come over? He's got a studio in his basement. And you're like, suddenly you're talking to T-Pain. Right? Like, you know, like what the hell is going on here? And you realize that somebody being unavailable is often, it has nothing to do with them. Look, if it's Will Smith or Barack Obama, they're hard to book. Okay. But if you're talking about normal guests that most of us have on our podcasts or could get on our podcasts, it's so much easier to shoot for people that look impossible than it is to get the people in this very wide middle. And I almost guarantee you that it's easier to book somebody who's on Shark Tank and is doing a media junket than it is to book somebody who is really hot on TikTok right now. Because there's just a level of availability that these people are used to. There's a level of, they don't get fame into their head a lot of the time because they've been famous for 20 years and they don't really care anymore. They've got a good team around them that's going to help make it happen. So like, I forget what my original frickin' point even was, but like my idea here, the moral of this story is that it's a lot of times it's easier to book the people that look much, much higher level than it is to get the people in the middle because there's sort of less traffic on that last mile, if you will. As for mindset hacks, to your earlier question, I would say that it sort of depends on what niche you're in, right? Like not what your podcast is in, but so guest booking. I thought it would be impossible to get some of these top authors. Then you get one and you go, huh, okay, that was cool. It took me a while, but like, I wonder if he would introduce me to Malcolm Gladwell. And then suddenly Malcolm Gladwell's doing your show. And then when you pitch somebody else, you go, yeah, I mean, I know you're really busy, but I've also had Malcolm Gladwell, I've had Matthew McConaughey, and I've had, Robert Greene and Mark Cuban. And they're like, wow, that's a pretty impressive roster. I no longer need to question whether this is worth my time because other people have sort of proven that out. Sure, I'll come and do your show. So as you get street cred and credibility, you start to feel like you are not entitled to, but deserving of those people's time. You know, look, if I got Ray Dalio on the show, then why shouldn't the other billionaire investor guy du jour also do the show? What's the difference? I mean, you know, he's on the same level as him and he had the time to come on twice. So what's the big deal? And as that starts to happen, you start to realize that you are giving them a platform and actually they should be thanking you for it. And don't let it go to your head. But the truth of the matter is the old media model is, oh my God, we're desperate for content. We need clicks. We need streams. We need people watching the news tonight. So let's make up some crap and like beg people to come on and yada, yada. The truth of the new media model is, yes, there are a gazillion outlets, but somebody is very privileged. And I guess this is a mindset hack, if you will. If I've got an audience and there's a lot of, let's say, voracious readers in the audience, which I have on the Jordan Harbinger Show, like really good educated people who love to read, then if you have a book, you are damn lucky if you get a chance to talk to 200,000 book readers that go out and buy this stuff, or 1 million, or whatever your show is, 10,000. It doesn't matter. And if you think your show is small, imagine all those people in a room. I do that too from time to time where I'm like, wah, wah, oh, we only have this many. It's like, what stadium could they fit in? And after a while, you like where we are now, like no stadium in the world can fit the audience of the Jordan Harbinger Show. And then when I was starting off, it was like, college football stadiums are filling up with this many people. So you might be a little sad that your show only has 2,000, 5,000 people watching, but you're like, let's see, what's the biggest club I went to in Las Vegas? How many people fit in there? 4,000? You have just sold out that club and they're listening to you talk about baseball with your favorite athlete. Like that is what you should be thinking of. Not I'm in my friend's basement talking into a USB mic and the furnace is going to kick on and screw up my show, right? Like you should be really realizing that you've assembled a great audience. And even if you've quote unquote only got a few hundred people, I've done speaking gigs where there's 200 people in the audience. That it still looks like a lot of people, right? That's how many people are listening to your show. That's a lot. That's a lot. So don't sell yourself short. Don't think you're bugging these people. They're lucky to be talking to your audience. Like the term guest is really accurate. They're a guest talking to an audience that's there for you and the people that you bring. But they're there for you. Like they listen to you. They trust you. That's a big deal. So you should be proud of that. And remember that when you're pitching so that you're not begging people to be on, because it really shouldn't be the case.
Totally. Thank you for that. That was huge. And I think it depends. It doesn't matter if it's a podcast or a newsletter or, what it is.
Right.
But I think we're in the attention economy where there's so many people vying for attention that it goes beyond media, because I think especially since COVID started, there's so many things, there's so much fear-based news and people are like exhausted and want to shut it down. They're searching for something that resonates. And I think when people find a message or, and whether it's a summit or a podcast or a movie or whatever it is, doesn't matter the format, but you get somebody's attention and you keep it because you engage with them, you inspire them, you keep moving forward. I think a lot of folks just don't recognize this. And I appreciate you talking about it and bringing it up, because as business leaders, as company founders, I think it's really important to keep that perspective of when you speak, whether it's to 40, 400, 4,000 or 40,000, you're having people give you their attention because And that's pretty spectacular, I think.
Yeah, because you've earned it, right? You've signaled at least to some critical mass of these people that you're not wasting their time. You're thinking about their needs. You're delivering value to them. Yeah, there's some people that trick other people into listening. You know, they say like, listen to my show and I'll teach you how to make money while you sleep. Like there's a few of those here and there, but really, and especially for like the Jordan Harbinger Show, you're listening to me tease a story out of a mafia enforcer. You're listening to me get an emotional story from a celebrity that they don't tell anywhere else. You're listening to me talk to a criminal and have them spill the beans because they're doing a really entertaining kind of thing that's really dangerous, and you're getting a look behind this sordid black curtain. Like that is there's honor there for you, for me as a host, and also this is something that like you have to earn every time, right? How often? Let me see. How many crappy shows do you think you have to do before people stop coming back? The answer is like in the single digits, right? So you really do have to earn your audience's time. And as an attorney and as a former attorney, I guess, although I still currently am, I'm non-practicing, you really have to treat your audience like you would treat a client. If you're an attorney or a patient, if you're a doctor, you have to be keeping their best interest in mind. So if somebody says, hey, can I come on your show? I'll give you $5,000, but I want to pitch my like scammy investment vehicle. You have to say no, because you're spending your credibility to do that. You think you're earning money, but you're really spending your credibility. You're trading your credibility for what is never a good amount of money. And that will ruin you quicker than you think. There's an old phrase that everyone's grandpa probably used to say, which is like, your reputation takes a lifetime to build and a moment to destroy, right? And that is really true when you're in the creator economy. I've done 14 plus years of shows, and a lot of them were bad, I'm sure, but most of them were pretty decent, right? I'd like to think. But how many do I have to do where it's really clear I got paid 25 grand to advertise a protein powder or a golf club or tires? You know, how many of those do I get before people go, you're a hack, I'm done, no thank you? There's unlimited choices out there. So every minute of the audience's time, I kind of feel like I have to earn it. You know, I'll throw an ad in there for a mattress and under the agreement that the audience knows that's how the bills are paid. But I'm still trying to make the ad funny. I'm still trying to make the ad entertaining. I'm still wrapping my personal life into it. You know, how I got a spring up my keister on the last mattress, and that's why I got the new one. You know, like that's what I want to bring into it, because yes, it's an ad, but I want everybody to feel like I'm earning their time. And the second you feel entitled to your audience's time, you're totally screwed, because people can feel that. Like, oh, you have to listen to these ads. Well, no, I'm going to skip them. And we see that with conversion in those shows that have 7 minutes of ads in the beginning. Everyone obviously skips those, right? They think they're getting away with it. And then everyone's like, yeah, I love that you have the ads in the front. You don't love that he has the ads in the front so that you can listen to 7 minutes of ads. You love that they're in the front so you can skip to minute 15 and the interview's beginning. But you know that advertisers, they see lower conversion, and then that host is making less money, or they're getting the ads are getting canceled. So you're actually not doing anything beneficial for anyone. You're skimming off the top of these advertisers, but it works in very limited ways does that work. That's why if you've noticed that Joe Rogan podcast, which is now exclusive on Spotify, he used to have 7 minutes of ads in the beginning. Now Spotify forcibly puts these ads into all different places inside the show because they convert more, and that's how the people there get paid. So you really have to treat your listeners well, but you also have to do it in a fair way. Don't do this like shady, oh, okay, I'm putting the ad in, but wink, wink, nudge, nudge, skip it. Make the ads entertaining. Bill Burr, he's a comedian, for those of you who don't know. He is known for ridiculing his sponsors, but he does it in a way that is, people will never miss an ad on a Bill Burr podcast because he will just make it hilarious and dirty and ridicule. So you have to, as a brand, you have to be comfortable with him being like, this is the stupidest fucking thing I've ever fucking seen. BillBurr.com/Jordan. He will do that, and he will relentlessly tool you, but it's part of the deal that he has with his audience. And part of the deal that I have with my audience is I will never tell you to put something into your body that I haven't put into my body. I'm not selling supplements that I don't use. I won't sell you food that I don't cook or use, those direct brands. I won't sell you clothing that I won't wear or let my kids wear, or I won't do anything like that, because then you're shilling, right? Then you're that person who does one thing but says another. And we have a lot of those people in the media right now that say, I would never do, case in point, like the college admissions scandal people who are like, work hard and be yourself. Meanwhile, they're like paying someone to take the SATs for their frickin' kids. Like there's so much of that right now. No one will ever trust those people again. They're shamed. They've been shamed internationally, at the very least in North America. So you really can avoid doing that by just making sure that you take the high ground with your audience, earn every moment of their time or every minute of their time on your show, and make sure that you have a fiduciary duty. Treat them like you would treat your brother or sister, provided you have a good relationship with that person. You don't tell your brother to buy something and then be like, what an idiot, right? You don't do that to your mom and your dad, hopefully. You don't tell them that this is delicious and then you're like, ugh, that is so gross. I can't believe you're eating that. I just said that because they paid me $300. You don't do that. Don't do it to your audience. They will remember it. People will remember that stuff and they will never support you again. And again, that trust takes years to build, and it takes one, penis pill commercial to ruin.
Totally. And it speaks to integrity. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that who we are in our depth, it's I think a lot of times we have to put on masks and roles to play parts for a while until we rise to that, until we get that confidence, until we have the experiences under our belt. But I think that there's a way we can always do it with integrity, and that we can be humble as we grow and be honest and have that integrity to let our audience know, let our team know, let our customers know what matters and what our intentions are, and that we're human also. I think people can really I think it's not as hard to bounce back from an oopsies if somebody accidentally has a bad penis pill that they're when they're not normally like that, when they've given and their audience trusts them, and then I just made a mistake, and they're open about it. I think that's where the audience, and maybe you can speak to this. It's actually not somewhere I was going to go, but it's not with the penis pill. But a few years ago, you had a different show that you took to the top, and that you had started from the 14 years ago, and things went sideways personally in that show, and you wound up not being on that show anymore, surprisingly. Right. And I think during that time, from my perspective, at least, it kind of got to be a dark place, and you questioned, like, how am I going to rebuild? But your people came to you. I mean, I even thought, the only reason I listened to that show is because of you. Like, if you're not there, it's not the show. And I think you got a lot of feedback like that from guests, from listeners. And now the Jordan Harbinger Show, as far as I can tell, is like light years beyond.
It is. Yeah, it's much, much larger. And I think the production quality is better. And a lot of listeners are like, your interviewing is better. I mean, it's hard for me to speak to that because I'm like inside the jar. It's hard to read the label. But the raw numbers of like just the amount of people listening is wildly further along than I was on my old show. But yeah, I did go through like a real hard time because I thought, I did that show for 11 years. We were one of the first podcasts in Apple. And I thought, how in the hell am I going to go from zero to where I am now? That took me 11 years. How long is it going to take me to rebuild that? 5 years if I'm lucky? Is it even possible? Because maybe we had like first to market advantage. When you're one of the first 1,000 podcasts, people are like, oh, well, you just collect things from just being there, right? You're catching flies just from standing outside. So that's how I felt about it. And we actually ended up being at the same size in terms of revenue within the first year. And then audience wise, we had met, I think we were there in like 8 months or something like that. I'd have to look back, but I want to say it was around 8 months. And even if you sort of generously look at the worst case scenario for the Jordan Harbinger Show and the best case scenario for the previous business, where they were, / we were top revenue, top listeners at the peak, and where we were like at the lowest, I think it took like 15 months or something to get there and then beat that. So the reason wasn't because I'm so smart and I'm so talented and blah, blah, blah. It was because I'd spent 11 years building trust with just a really good audience of people. And over time, people were like, where the hell is Jordan? And what happened to this show? And then they would Google Jordan Harbinger and it'd be like the Jordan Harbinger Show. And people were like, oh, click subscribe, and I went on a bunch of other friend shows, like mutual friends like Pat Flynn were like, oh my gosh, Jordan switched to the Jordan Harbinger Show. So he'd send out like an email and everybody would click and subscribe. And I did that with a bunch of friends. I had a lot of good contacts and people like you were like, hey, FYI, Jordan Harbinger, if you listen to him, he's over at the Jordan Harbinger Show now. And that times like hundreds and hundreds of casual acquaintances, good people, friends, fans. It snowballs. That's the word I'm looking for. It snowballs into thousands. And then suddenly it was like the first month we had, or the first couple of days, it was like 3,000 downloads, 3,000, 2,000, 13,000. And then it was like 38,000 downloads, like in a week, and then it was just like, oh, okay, now we're getting even more than we were before because everybody who felt, look, we probably lost some casual listeners. Okay, that happens, right? But a lot of people were like, this is a bunch of bullshit. I can't believe you had to start over. This is so unfair. Okay, I know you've been asking me to share the show, and I never did, but like I owe you this. And then they would post it, and I would see a couple hundred more people click on, and now I hear every day, hey, I share the show with like all my friends. I love it. Thank you. And that means the world because, look, someone can write you a 5-star review. I love that, right? But when they tell their mom about it and they tell their uncle and their friend and their boyfriend and their sister and their marketing class, that's the real compliment because they're not just quietly writing it on their phone while no one's looking. They're not hiding their phone screen from their friends. They're shouting it from the rooftops. And like that's a real brand. But you only kind of find that out after you've done all the work. And also, yeah, you think if you're a normal human, you think like, oh my God, what if no one cares? What if I'm just totally screwed and like nobody gives a shit and nobody ever comes and subscribes? And I thought that was possibly going to happen. What's funny is all my friends who knew me really well, and even some people who didn't, they were like, look, I know it sucks, but you trust me, you have nothing to worry about. You probably even told me like everyone's going to come back. And I was like, you don't know that, but then they did. And I was like, oh, look, everyone came back. And I tell my friends and they're like, dude, we told you that like on day one, you're too busy crying in your cereal to listen to us. And you didn't believe in us. And I've had friends being like, look, if I could buy stock in you, I would. Like, you're low right now and you're going to freaking take off. Like, this is Tesla in 2015. Buy that Jordan Harbinger stock. And I'd be like, you're nice guys. Thanks for saying that. It was like Eeyore from freaking Winnie the Pooh.
I remember.
Yeah, it was awful. And
I was like, congratulations. I mean, it sucks what you went through, but congratulations. Yeah. This is the best thing that's ever happened to you. You are the star. So congrats, because you're going to take it there now.
So many people said this is the best thing that's ever happened to you. It just doesn't feel that way right now. And I wanted to tell those people to just stick your you-know-what in an electrical socket, buddy. Like, it was just like, that was like the most annoying thing to hear from people, because I know they meant it like it's a vote of confidence, but what you're hearing when you're in that situation is, it's like when you're getting bullied at school and so they're taking your lunch money and they're giving you wedgies or whatever, and your mom's like, your grandma's like, they're just jealous, honey. And you're like, no, they freaking hate me. Like, what are you talking about? They're not jealous. What are you talking about? Nobody is jealous of me. I'm getting swirlies, okay? Come on, grandma. She's just saying it to be nice. So when people were saying, oh, it's the best thing that ever happened to you, some people had reasons for that, but most people, I was like, you're just being nice. But now I totally get it. 2020 hindsight, what a lot of these people were saying, and they turned out to be correct, was, look, when I left my old company, I took the whole team with me. Why did they come with me? Well, they believed in what we were doing and believed in me as a leader, if you want to go that route. Okay. Then other people came over to the show, and now I don't split the profits with guys that drink all day, and I don't have to worry about coming up with an idea just to have it shot down because it wasn't theirs. Like, that's what these people meant. And the proof is really in the pudding. Like, we're 4 years into the Jordan Harbinger Show or something like that right now, and we are at least 4 to 5 times bigger than my previous show ever was. Why is that? Well, the answer is certainly not that those guys and all of the other assets I had in the business were an integral part of the show. If that were the case, I wouldn't have the success that I do right now. But nobody, I say this, I don't think normal people go, that's okay, I'm so great, I'll be fine. I didn't think like that because I think it would be weird to think that I'm so amazing I can do everything myself and I can do it in record time. I mean, I wish I had that sort of like narcissistic confidence, but I don't. So I really felt like it was impossible. Turns out I was being a little hard on myself. That said, I don't know if I would go back and tell Jordan from 2018 that everything's going to be, I might say everything's going to be okay, just so he could get a freaking hour of sleep here and there. But I don't think I'd say like, chill, you're going to be fine. Because I think getting busted down to the bottom of the ladder motivated me in a way that you really don't get motivated by. Like, you know those like hustlers who become rappers and they have like $20 million, but they used to be drug dealers, you know, like 50 Cent or whatever. Those guys, they were motivated by, what do you want to call it? Like the disadvantaged situation that they found themselves in. They were motivated by that. And I think if you started handing them everything, they would demotivate. So the fact that I was able to build back is not just because like, oh, I got lucky or this is so great or I'm such a great talent. I think I really, me and my team were really, really good underdogs. We were like, let's do this shit. And that worked out for us, but it doesn't always work out that way, you know? So I think there is I really have the show fans to thank, the reputation we built over time. Thankfully, we bothered to do that. The trust we had with the audience, the work ethic, like all of that came into play to make it a win, right? You really can't sort of isolate it to one particular factor.
So good. Thank you so much for sharing all that. Because integrity and the network that you've built, the things that you've done, you've earned that trust over time. So it's awesome. I have so many more questions, but I'm also aware of the time and we've only got a couple minutes left. Yeah. Can I ask you one more thing and then we wrap up? Okay,
yeah,
perfect.
We're good.
So before I do, I want folks to screen cap this, take your cell phone out, take a picture, make sure that you post your takeaways, your greatest takeaways from Jordan, and use hashtag MMFBL for Mindset Mastery for Business Leaders, MMFBL, and mention Jordan Harbinger. That's JordanHarbinger. And we'll both get our eyes on your posts. So Jordan, one last thing about the networking aspect. So you had mentioned before, you were able to leverage interviews and relationships by asking for an interview with somebody else or a warm introduction, I think. Did I catch that?
Yeah, I don't do that as much as you would think. Like, a lot of people go, oh man, I bet once you get Kobe Bryant, you're just like, yo, Kobe, give me Ray Dalio's phone number or whatever. Like, you know, hook me up with Dennis Rodman. Those guys are siloed much more than you think. And also even the publicist might often be like, ooh, I don't know who manages them. Or a lot of times, even if they do, they'll be like, here's their number, you can call them. And then you're just kind of starting at ground zero. The warm intro thing does work, but it's rarer than you think. And a lot of people have a lot at risk by recommending media outlets. You know, like I might interview T-Pain, who's really good friends with, I think, Jamie Foxx. But if I'm like, yo, how do I get Jamie Foxx on the show? Do you think this is worth their time? He'd be like, hell yeah, it was worth the time. And he'll text him, but I will never hear anything from his team because all Jamie Foxx will do with that text from T-Pain is go, cool, man. And then he forwards it to his publicist who goes, I don't give a crap about this. I'm going to set up your media schedule with whoever I want. Delete. Right? They don't do that unless you're like Jamie Foxx's cousin, right? Then they care. They don't really care otherwise. You know, your reputation does way more for you than you networking with these people. Now, that said, the gatekeepers are the people that you really want to network with. Because what I've noticed is, let's say that you're really good for, maybe not really good. Let's say you know a professional basketball player, or let's say you know T-Pain because you've hung out with him a couple times and you've got his phone number, he is most likely just going to refer you to his publicist because he doesn't schedule his own media. So it's actually better to be friendly with his publicist, his manager, than it is to be friends with him. Just like with me, you can network with me all you want, but really, like, if you want me to do something for you, you got to call my wife, Jen. Like, you got to email Jen. Jen, if she likes you, is going to make it happen. And if she gets a weird whiff that you're not cool, like, suddenly your emails aren't getting delivered anymore. Like, I mean, she will just block that out. So it really is much easier and better to befriend somebody's chief of staff if you're trying to get a billionaire than it is to be like, oh, we hung out at the TED conference. We hung out at Davos Economic Forum in Switzerland. Like, they are just going to refer you to their team. And if their team thinks you're a schmo, you're done. But if their team thinks you're cool, it doesn't even matter if you know them, because their team will go, no, we love you. You're cool. You've been really cool to work with. We're going to get you on his media schedule for when the new movie comes out. The end. So you actually don't need to become friends with a bunch of celebrities. That's some sort of Instagram influencer bullshit when you're like, we're all friends. None of that matters. You got to be nice to the team, and you've got to help them do their job. You know, if you help a publicist get PR for their clients, they will then give you their big fish clients as a thank you. It doesn't matter as much that you did a line of blow with so-and-so at a Hollywood party in the hills. Like, that's not necessarily going to get you interviews. So I've heard.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. All great points, lots of takeaways. Jordan, thank you so much for being a part of this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always fun.